Hey everyone, it is nearly 4 a.m. and it is time, as you know, for another Careers Clinic live with Careers Clinic Career Advice UK. I'm Brian, Career Advice UK. I'm going to be on for at least the next hour, taking your questions on CVs, cover letters, workplace situations, and more. So sit back, get yourself a cup of coffee, and enjoy the live. So, if you do have a question, feel free to put it down below and I will pick it up on Iggy, good to see you. Thank you for joining. It is the 4th of January, so let's just start by any type of question. If you recently graduated university and you are struggling to find a job, please put it down and I will pick it up. Hey, Bazzy, I will pick it up and I will give you some tips and advice to help you along the way. And if there is, it's a bigger issue that's not really easily mentioned in the next hour or so, I can always pick it up outside, and there is contact information in my profile. So, if you are a recent university graduate and you're struggling to find a job after graduation, or if you're recently graduated and you're sending out the same CV and can't understand why nobody's interviewing you, it is, probably the reason why. So if you have a question, please put it down below and I will pick it up on a first come, first serve basis. So if you have a question, it is easy to ask. It is easy to ask. Just put it down. I will pick it up. It is, I would disagree with you, AK, because this is the time I do get the most viewers. By far. I've tried it in the evening and it doesn't work. I don't get the same number of viewers and the same amount of interaction. So, yeah, I know. I'm in the UK too, AK. Totally know that. And so, yeah, it is the time that I do get the most views, believe it or not, and the most interaction. I don't get the same in the evening. And it is, believe it or not, AK, most of my viewers, 90%, are actually UK. So it doesn't seem to really matter what time, because this is the time when I sleep from I go to bed early, about 8 p.m., and I'm up about 3. So, it is, if you do have a question, I do pick it up. I do pick it up first come, first serve basis. So, if you do have a question, anything, UK, if it's a recent university graduate and you're struggling, to find a job after graduation, please let me know. I do have some tips for you, some advice, and it is, it is really difficult, especially if you are just recently graduated, to find a job, especially in the UK. But it is not impossible. It's just knowing how to do it and where to look and doing a bit of networking. So it is relatively easy. So if you do struggle, okay, so you have 2 years experience, okay, and what have you been looking? Are you sending out the same CV to everyone? And what's your experience in? Been looking for September. If you are sending out the same CV to everyone, what you really need to do is start aligning your CV with the job description. That means that you need to send out. Okay, so that's pretty good. It is a very tight job market. So what you need to be doing, one of the first things you need to do is stop sending out the same CV to everyone. Because when you send out the same CV to everyone, what it really does, it says to the employer that you haven't spent time to look at the job description. And so it will get rejected. So it will be like, what you need to do is start aligning your CV with the job description. Read the job description, think about your experiences, and begin to line it. If you're going on an interview every week or two, that is good, but that does also say if you're going on interviews a lot, it also suggests you're not closing the deal. And so there is probably something in what you're saying is probably not working or not resonating, or you're not giving enough information. So when you interview, do you struggle with the questions to know what they want? So do you struggle to know what they're asking? Do you know how to structure your response? Because there is a kind of a structure to the response. So there is a way you need to kind of structure. You kind of have to explain why the situation arose. You have to set some context. So why did this situation arose? What was your involvement? And what was the result of your involvement? And that means basically you need to, speak about yourself. You need to be able to talk about yourself in that way. So you need to start to do a bit of introspection, saying that this is what came up. This was the situation. Hey, S-Nuts, thanks for the likes. And then come down and talk about what is what was the result of your interaction? What was the result of your intervention? Well, thank you, S-Nuts, for the rose. That's very nice. So it's about really, oh, that's so nice. Thank you so much for the roses, S-Nuts. That's very nice. Thank you. So you need to think about, when you're talking about in answering questions, is talk them through. It's a bit of a journey. Explain to them, why did this come up? What did you do? It's about what did you do, and try to break it down. Did you have to delegate? What did you, how did you come up to that decision to make that, interaction? What did you decide? How did you decide it? Did you have to supervise anyone? Kind of put context into it, tell them the story. And then when you did this, what was the result? What would you do differently? What did you, like about it? What could have been changed? It is that whole kind of story. So if you can do that, that really will begin to help you, with your, with the interview, because it seems as though it seems like there's a couple of things kind of going on. Well, thank you, S-Nuts. That's very nice. Thank you for the compliment. I think there's two things that are going on. Hey, thank you, Perfectly Imperfect. That's great for the follow. Thank you. I think there are two things that are really going on here. One is, I think, oh, okay. Let me come to you in a quick second, Bullock. Um, so I think you need to look at your CV, send off your CV as aligning more with the job description. And when you're in the interview, tell it as a story. Tell them, what did you do? What was the result of your interaction? And tell it why it came up. What did you do? What was the result? What would you do differently? Coming to you, Bullock. Okay, so what is what is a PPEIST? A PIS? Hey, thank you. They will say that they will. A lot of them will be in the public sector. And charity sector ones will be the most likely. So anything university, um, you know, okay, philosophy, economics. Okay. Good morning, side. It is. Let me just come back real quick. Guaranteed, Hugh Jass. Guaranteed it would be. It will be public sector, charities, universities, city, councils, any kind of government, anything charity related, and also to some of the more larger private businesses in the private sector may do interview, but a lot of that look at the charities, public sector, not-for-profit, universities, councils will be the most of them that will offer them. So, good question. So, is getting back to you. Sorry about that. Just wanted that was a quick one, Bullock. I think for you, if you're going to do a if you want to get into consulting, usually you need to have a little bit of experience along with, you need a couple years experience, and you also need to probably have a master's. And if your degree is in, let me come back to it. So if you want to do a kind of like in politics, economics, you would need to kind of specialize. Are you talking politics? Or are you talking economics? And usually, I would take a look. You would need, if you have a kind of like a BA in philosophy, economics, and politics, you'll need, if you want to do consulting, you would really need to kind of focus on either the politics or the economics. And both are going to require some experience just to be able to kind of know what you're consulting about, what the issues start to come up with, and have a kind of start to develop a track record for yourself and to give you some credibility when you start to look for clients. As for the degree, if you're going to do economics, an MBA would probably be well suited, or a master's degree in economics. And a master's degree in economics would be would be good. So a master's of business administration, or a master's in economics, or even better yet, a PhD in economics would really help with credibility. If you are looking at more the politics, again, you will need to have the ability to have a track record. You have to show that you've worked on campaigns and that these have been successful. You need to be able to show that you have started to take on more and more responsibility. So you need, again, to create that credibility. And again, a degree in, master's degree in politics, again, would really help with your credibility. So what I would start to do for you, my recommendation is start to come up with a plan, and start to think about, are you going to go down economics, or are you going down politics? The philosophy is good because it will kind of give you a grounding and help to kind of guide you and direct you with how you approach things. So it's a really good degree to have to kind of ground you. It is for you then is the choice between politics or economics to set up a consulting firm. Okay, so policy consultant. Yep. So that would definitely be, at least a master's degree. So if you're looking at policy development type of thing, it would require at least a master's degree. And again, you need to, again, if you're going to start to look for jobs and stuff, start to look for government policy where you can start to implement policy, start to look at policies, and be part of policy development, because it's going to be consulting is you're going to really need to show that you are involved with policy development. You've had success with policies. I would say, finger in the wind. Once you get that master's, probably 1 or 2 years afterwards, you probably want to do that. At a minimum, if you're going to do consulting, what you really need is at least 3 to 5 years. So if you do your master's degree, if you get yourself a job in government policy, kind of start to build on that and start to build connections, start to build your network. I would say finger in the wind, and this is not knowing anything, without any further information. I would say, roughly, and again, roughly, it would be, 3 to 5 years minimum. It probably would be a bit more because you will really need to kind of really start to develop, a bit of a reputation, need to develop a network, and I would say probably, probably in the 5 years, it would a lot of it would 5, maybe 7, probably more realistic, but potentially if you're looking fast, you could do 3 to 5, especially if you do have your master's degree and you start to develop a network, and you can start to show some quick wins and to be able to develop some contacts. The one thing I will caution you is, okay, yeah, so you are pretty young, so you do have time. The one thing I would really caution you about is be careful of any contracts that you sign that you have a no-compete clause. And read the confidentiality clauses, because if you do take on customers that you worked with in any role, it can cause you issues contractually. If you are doing government policy, it depends on the role. There is non-compete clauses. There is always confidentiality clauses. And if you're dealing with very sensitive information, it may be a lot more restrictive. There may be confidentiality that survives. And so, again, it may be certain things you may not be able to use, but you always need to, when you go into consulting, you really need to be sure that you're keeping the information confidential. You're not competing against your previous employers, because it can bring in some legal difficulties for you. So always, before you launch, have any contracts that you've signed reviewed for them, especially if you're doing policy, because you may wind up, working for a large corporation, for example, reviewing government policies and making recommendations to them based on that and what it may be impacting you, and or how do we comply with this policy. If there is a policy regarding, if you're working for a large firm and government policy comes out, what do you do? How do you manage it? And again, there may be things that, again, you may be asked, not to do, hold back information. So it's always important to always have your contracts reviewed, to make sure that you're complying with them, and to make sure that, basically, you don't wind up violating a contract and having some type of legal issue. Any type of legal issue. So I'm Brian, Career Advice UK, live streaming at the moment. If you do have a question, feel free to put it down. I pick it up on. I think for you, any final tips for you would be simply this: is to get if you're looking at doing consultancy, look at doing your master's, because a master's will position you and give you some more credibility. If you're going down to economics, probably, doctorate, but at least for politics, at least a master's, if not a doctorate too. Make sure that you do start to develop a network, tip-wise, start to develop a network, start getting yourself involved in the field, and really start to get yourself known, start to develop a network, and start showing that you've had, results of your intervention, and start creating a track record, because that is what's going to really help you out. And make sure that any contracts you sign doesn't prohibit you from disclosing who you've worked for and stuff, to keep that stuff confidential. Because if you do, it may hurt you if you do try to go into consulting. So always have do a bit of forward planning, looking at contracts, have them, reviewed, just to make sure that if you want to go into consulting, that there's nothing that would impinge on that ability to set up your own consulting firm. So very good question. I very much appreciated that one. Good job. Thank you. So I'm Brian, Career Advice UK. If you do have any questions, please feel free to put them down. I pick them up on a first come, first served basis. Had a very good, nice, long, thick conversation here about setting up and kind of how to prepare to set up a consulting business. And also have had a little bit of time talking about CVs, and how to find a job, and what can be done to help improve positions when you're struggling to find a job. What can be done? So it is still, hey, no problem, Block. That's what I do, is to let people know, to help people out. So take care. So if you are just joining and you do please please share, and please follow, because once you do follow, it really does help you to kind of keep up to date with my content and live streams. And again, I will talk about anything. So if you have any questions on CVs, job interviews, workplace situations, if you have, UCAS I will, thank you so much. If you do have questions on, interviews or tips, if you just graduated university, I know from my recent live streams, I've had a few people from university having issues with finding jobs afterwards and finding it very difficult. So if you're one of these people who have graduated and just can't find a job afterwards, put it down below. More than happy to pick it up, give you some tips, some advice on how to move it and how to move on to it. And if you do have questions, on that, I can help you anywhere along the way, from CVs to job interviews, couple potentially LinkedIn type of kind of question, networking type of questions, networking, where to search for jobs, how to search for jobs, all that, feel free to ask them. More than happy to pick those up. If you've been sending out CVs, likewise, you don't necessarily have to be a university student struggling. If you've been sending out CVs, and not getting a response, without a response, put it in the comments section. Likewise, if you've been, getting interviews, but you just can't turn that interview into an offer, then make sure you put it down below. I absolutely love to help with those. Also, too, again, if you do, send out, those CVs and not able to convert, or if you've been going on interviews and not able to convert those into an offer, again, put that down below and we can pick it up. Now, I've had I've been doing this and having these chats here, requests for guest spots. And what I do is, and I'll let this pin wind out, and I will get you let this pin, I'll put the next one up, and then I will talk about guest spots. So the way I operate my lives is this: I operated on a point-based system, and that point-based system is kind of like this: 1,000 points. It's a CV tip. 1,500. It's 5-minute guest spot that covers career-related topic. It's somebody I'll speak a bit more about this as soon as I get it pinned. At 2,000, it's an interview tip, and again, like CVs, I do have a lot, and I could talk about it. At 3,000, I have a CV and cover letter tip sheet. 4,500, I have a CV template. And then big surprise, once live. So I do have, and this is the way I operate, and then there's more after that, but this is to get you up to date. So at 1,000, I do a CV tip, and I got literally hundreds of them. I can sit there and talk about CVs for hours. Again, at 1,500, I do a 5-minute guest spot. Last time I did was last week, and the person that I picked was somebody who didn't contribute any points, and the last 2 times it hasn't been anyone who's contributed points. But again, under TikTok rules, it has to be kind of a fair thing. So I need to, open it up to everyone. So if somebody's contributed or not, anything, they have to have a fair choice at it. at the spot. At 3,000, I do have a CV and cover letter cheat sheet that I send out. At 4,500. I have a minimalist functional CV. And also, too, I run a kind of live goals. There are 3 of them. Once all 3 of them are met, or 7,500, which is ever happens first, I will give a very big surprise, and it is a big surprise. Now, for the goals, and I will put it into there, because I not a big fan of having a lot of banners. So I will publish them here. It's so it's a hand hard time. And so I will publish them, and once all 3 are met, so once all these are met, and I think these come to be about 4,000 points, which is a lot less than 7,500. If these are all met, it's a lot quicker than 7,500. But if I do hit 7,500 and we don't hit all 3, I will still give the big surprise, because I don't like to kind of tempt people and we don't hit it and not hold it back. So the live goals are 3 hand hearts. I think they're 100 apiece. Again, rows, it's 750. We've already had a few of those, so we're getting closer to meeting that one. And 1 meteor shower, which is roughly 3,000 points. So total is 4,000, just under. It's just over 4, so it'd be 40-50. So again, if we got all 3, if I would get all 3 of these right away, we would do the goals here, along the way, and then I would give the big surprise out to those who wanted to take advantage of it. They can, and believe me, you do want that, because it is quite I think a very good and very valuable gift for just being a participant in contributing. So it is one. So again, getting back to kind of the discussion here, we're kind of winding down into the last half. So again, talking about CVs, and today's kind of focus has been a little bit on the idea and concept of university graduates, because I do know, there has been, people have graduated university, at the end of December. And also, too, we got UCAS closing their applications in 10 days. And so it's a kind of a really good time to talk about job hunting as a graduate and trying to find your first job afterwards. So if you are, struggling to find a job after graduation, there is a lot there for you. And there's a lot of support. I can do a little bit on live, but most of the time it would probably be more closer to one-to-one support, and the information is in my profile on how to contact me. But there's a few things I could probably do on live, but most of the time, for more the kind of the support for yourself, kind of ongoing support, or more time involved, would mean more on a one-to-one type of basis. So I can do a little bit of both. Like I said, during this live, and I've dropped my darn phone, dropped something, so I need to get that picked up so I don't run over it in my chair. So again, if you are a university graduate struggling to find your first job, put it down, let me know. I'm more than happy to kind of pick it up. And even if you're not, like I said, kind of said during today's live stream, is that if you are sending off, CVs and you're struggling to get a job, or if you are, getting a lot of interviews but just can't convert it into an offer, usually there's something kind of going on. I can take a few guests during the lives, give you a few general tips, but to do it more cohesively, it really kind of requires a bit of a one-to-one discussion to really work out what's going on. But anyhow, if you do have a question, on CVs, interviews, workplace situations, because I've had over the last week, believe it or not. Hey, thank you, Jacob, for the follow. Okay, so what's the issue, Jacob? Why are you worried that it won't get accepted? So what is, making you think it won't be accepted? And what do you mean that it won't get accepted? It mean it won't convert into an interview? Okay. Okay, so there's a couple questions here, Jacob. Do you have a lot of job experience? Do you have like more than maybe like 2 years experience? Is this relatively new for you? And I wouldn't rely too much on online information, because there is a lot of, you're new to the area, so you're making a bit of a career change. Is that right? So it is, I would say to you, don't rely a lot on internet chatter. Okay, so it's going to be, okay, so there's a couple things, okay, you can do with that. What you need to do is, create what's called a functional CV, and all you have to do is just go online, and there's literally like thousands of functional CV templates out there, and you don't need anything really fancy, and you don't need to put your photograph on it. You don't need a lot of colors, because at the end of the day, recruiters are only going to look at your CV for about 30 seconds at best. What you need to do with what a functional CV will do versus a chronological is this. It will highlight your experiences. It will highlight your skills, okay, and not your experiences. So emphasize your skills, de-emphasize your experience. So what it will do is highlight to them that you have the skills, but you may not have the experience. So pick up probably you don't have on it the experience, which is fine, because you can always address that in the interview, kind of like, tell me something about yourself. You can work it into why you made a career change. And to do that, so you can do that. You can also address that in your cover letter. So it's not a big deal. What you need to do when you're doing it is to make sure that you spend a lot of time looking at that job description and identifying your relevant skills that match that. And then when you find those skills, making sure that it gets captured into that functional CV. And then again, craft your, like I said, work on your cover letter. Now, does that mean you will automatically get the interview? Absolutely not. But what it does do is increase your chance, because what you're doing is you're highlighting your skills, instead of highlighting that you don't have the experience. Because when you do a chronological, it shows kind of your experience and progression. And it will start to kind of draw their attention like, hey, this guy doesn't have it. But if you do a functional CV, it shows that you have the skills, but maybe not the experience. And so it's a way to get around it. So when the internet sits there and says, you won't get it because you don't have the experience, it's a load of malarkey. It's take a look. What I would really recommend to you is go online and just type in functional CVs, and then take a look under functional CVs, and there's a whole slew of different templates you can use on it, and it just really it's about drawing out your skills. I do work with CVs, but I do charge. But again, if you're interested in that, take a look at my profile, or direct message me, and just say we had this little chat on the live, because I usually will ignore most of the messages I get unless I tell someone to contact me. So you got that option there. So what you just need to do is really look at that job description, do a skills analysis, look at the job description, identify the skills that you have, put it into that functional CV, and then, list your jobs kind of, but again, it's a very kind of minimalistic, you work at company XYZ as, this, and you were there for so long. It's very kind of de-emphasizes it. So again, it is something, you can do. It is something, if you're looking to make a move, a career change, a functional CV is the best way to go, because it highlights your skills to say, yes, I can do it, because I have the skills, but I may not have the titles of doing it. And so, so it is a way to kind of get around it. Again, does it guarantee you'll get the interview? Absolutely not. But it is a way to showcase that you have the experience, to make it competitive, to make you stand out in the selection process, so that you can have the best shot of getting that interview. And again, you never know. If you do it right and you write a good cover letter to go with it, it may just work for you. So, like I said, if you need a bit of help, like I said, I do charge for my time, but you do have, I do have, I can help you along the way if you need a bit of help with it. So, so to kind of answer your question, I would say I wouldn't say to be formal. What I would say is, consider a different repackaging your information, because the information you have, it's there, and if you're applying for this job, it says to me that you feel like you can do it and you have the skills, but you may not necessarily have the experience. And so it's again reframing. Hey, Sub-Asics, good to see you again. It is a way to reframe your experience so that it calls out your strengths without your without really calling attention to the fact that you may not have the formal experience for it. But again, what we also have to realize too, when we're doing this, it seems to be there's a bit of a change in the job marketplace, where people are putting more of an emphasis on skills versus kind of this internal like idea of just promoting people for the sake of promotion. And there's a bit more of a, a push on skills. And we have to also remember one thing when we're applying for jobs, and a lot of people forget this, is that job titles, and I talked a little bit about this yesterday during my live stream, job titles are, a bunch of malarkey, because they really don't say a lot about what you've done. It doesn't summarize your skills. It's not like saying, it's not definitive, because for me, what I do is I do contract management in the charity and not for profit kind of public sector work. And for me, there's a whole slew, when I look at contract management. Hey, morning, Jordan. There's a whole slew of contract managers. And when they use the term contract manager, it really doesn't grasp the skills, because there's a whole slew. There's about 3 really variations to the contract manager, 3 or more. And for me, what I'm the one is the one that has to have the more of the, if you want to say, kind of the legal knowledge end of things, than the kind of the operational and delivery end of it. And so I'm really the legal end of contracts. And so I am the one that, when it comes to contracts, I'll draft, I'll write, I will review them, recommend, and, and do a lot of risk assessment with them, and from a risk assessment standpoint. And so, it is taking that kind of knowledge. There are others that will take it after the point. I will come in, because the role is a bit more senior. I will come in pre-signing and do that. There's others that will manage it post-signing. Other contract managers will post-sign, and these tend to be more kind of sale-esque type of roles, where they try to add services, and then they bring it to the legal team if things go belly up, which then somebody like me would intervene and review. Now, there is kind of a third kind of group of contract managers that will take it from inception to completion, which not many do, and not many people really have the skill set to do, because it becomes too time demanding on somebody to kind of manage it from beginning to end, and it's just not, in my opinion, either practical or it's not really practical, and it's not really cost effective. It's not really an efficient way to manage contracts. It is, I think, a very kind of archaic and very waste of, in my opinion, it's a waste of money type of an approach, because it just adds a lot to somebody's workload, unnecessary work, and you overly burden somebody with it. So I would always would say against that type of an approach, and I've been approached for it, for those types of roles, and it was I would have to say the interview for that was a nightmare, because they wanted 4 interviews for the role, and it's just not worth anybody's time. You have to go through 4 interviews to manage a contract from beginning to completion. and then the pay wasn't all that great. It wasn't really worth the time, and so I just kind of turned it down. So, and I was glad that I wasn't selected. So if you are just joining, do like the feed, please like, please share. Oh, well, thank you for the hand heart, Jacob. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. So if you do like the feed, please like, please share, and, please follow. Because if you do follow, it does help to keep you up to date on the content in my live streaming schedule. So, it is, so if you're just joining and you do like the feed, please like, and please share and please follow. And if you do feel inclined, please think it's because it really does help me to know what really resonates with people. And it does help me to plan my content. Hey, no problem, Jacob. That's what I'm here for. And like I said, I'm here, just drop me a message if you need a bit of support getting that CV up and written. And just let me know. Like I said, I do charge a little bit for time because it does take a time to do, but happy to help you along the way. So yeah, it's just the only thing I would kind of just say to you, Jacob, is just be kind of cautious on manage the expectation, because if you don't really have the experience, it does kind of come out, and this is a very kind of competitive job market. It is a very competitive job market, but it is one that I think you can overcome, doing it right way and presenting your information the right way. But again, just be prepared that if you're applying for a job without the experience, but you do have the skills, it just may get rejected on the fact that they don't see the experience. But I think sometimes the best way to always approach that is just to kind of be a bit upfront, because then it doesn't catch you off guard when you're in the interview thinking, oh, they like what I saw. And then you get thrown the question about, looking at you get a kind of like a follow-up question looking at your CV. It doesn't seem like you really have the experience. Can you make a comment on that or explain why do you feel like you're a good fit for the role? And again, it comes down to really, again, knowing what's on your CV, what you put down, and thinking about how your skills match it. And again, the way I would approach something like that would be to say to them, like, look, I may not have the job title that states it, but it's not really about job titles. It's about the skills and experience. And if you take a look at my CV, I've highlighted several of them, several skills that are quite applicable to this role that you've asked for. And I have been able to demonstrate and then go through like a list of a couple and just say, like, look, it's about skills, not job titles. And so again, it's one of those ways, to kind of not deflect, but to answer things directly and just say, like, look, in my opinion, it's not about, having job titles to show that, I have worked as a business analyst, when I have done, already software user acceptance testing. I have done, process improvements, and looked at things, done business cases. I have the skills. It's just that, I haven't had the formal title of, like, for example, business analyst, but I've done all this. So yeah, I do feel I can do it. And that's kind of the way you just need to kind of approach that and try to keep it on a skills basis versus trying to argue job title. Because I think a lot of times, especially in the UK here, people do get wrapped up on titles. And so if you are just joining and you do have questions, I do pick up questions on CVs, job interviews, and CVs, job interviews, cover letters, workplace situations. And I spent did a live stream a couple days ago just talking about a lot of a lot of situations in the workplace. Couple questions. Had a couple of viewers ask about different workplace situations, and so it spent a whole day on workplace situations. However, workplace situations tends not to be one that I get a lot of questions about. I do tend to get a lot more of the CV type of questions about, recently graduated, can't find a job, or I'm sending off the same CV and I can't understand. Hey, no problem. We're glad to have you, Jacob. It really made today really enjoyable and really loved your questions and hope to see you back and keep me updated on how it goes. Thank you so much for joining. So it's again talking about CVs. So if you sent off CVs and not getting any replies, ask away. More than happy. And you too, Jacob. Have a really nice day. It's really cold, but enjoy it. So so ask away. I do CVs, talk about cover letters, cover letters, CVs, cover letters, networking. I've talked about networking a couple of times, but I haven't for a while. So if you have any networking questions, do feel free to ask, or if you have questions on using job agencies, because I do feel in this current climate, the best thing you can do is use a job agency in the UK to help you find, because I think a lot of the jobs, while it may seem like they've kind of dried up, I don't think they have. I think a lot of them have gone temporary or kind of on a fixed term contract. So if you're looking, when you're searching and you're looking permanent, I would probably say include in your job search, fixed term contracts, and also to take a look at, as a part of your whole job search strategy, talk about, and think about, using job agencies, because they can really help you cut through a lot of the malarkey that goes through with finding jobs, especially when it comes to interviews and getting feedback from interviews, because you will typically get some feedback. And for the last 6 years with my kind of working contract management, I tend to use, well, I shouldn't say tend, I do use agencies. And I will use, it is. And it is very good, Nick. Exactly. It is, agencies they do get a bad rap. But from my experience, job agencies, work really well, because especially if, like in Nick's case, you can go from temp to perm. Yep, and they do. And it is a lot of, from my experience working with them, you do have to cut through a lot of the, for lack of the better word, shit that happens. I do, like with my last job that I did when the contract came to an end, the contract was for, ended in October. And what happened was, the job ended in October. I dealt with, went in contact with agencies. Another agency found me on LinkedIn, got in contact with me. and wound up getting an umbrella job, which pays quite well, um, and and it is one of those things. I've applied for permanent jobs and got turned down for those because I had the experience, but I didn't have experience in the sector um, that they were hiring, which is, I think, um, a bit trite, but it's a competitive market. Um, oh, exactly. Totally agree with you, Nick. Um, I went down that route and stuff, and agencies, with this job that I got, basically, I was the only candidate who interviewed, and I got a response back that same day um, from the interview. It was really quick. Sent off my CV. They liked it. Um, the organization said I was their primary choice, their first choice. I got interviewed first, and was heard back same day. Had the offer same day, a couple hours later, and that's how quick. And that's why I like agencies, because you kind of cut through the BS that goes with job interviews. The other interview that I had once my contract ended, basically wound up having to interview for my old job, which I didn't get, and I knew I wouldn't get. But anyhow, that's a totally different story. And it took them like over a week to get back to me. Agency interview, boom. Offer same day. When I interviewed for my role, it took them over a week to get back, and just to tell me I didn't get it, which I knew I wouldn't. But again, it is one of those things that just kind of goes with it. And so I would always say to anyone looking for a job, especially in this very kind of competitive job market, you really need, and you have at least 6 months to 2 years job experience, you really, really, really need to include at least as a part of your mix job search strategy and agency, because without an agency, I think your job search will be a lot longer. It will be a lot longer. And the other thing too, I would say with agencies, it's not always the case, but you will typically, from at least when I've worked agency, you will tend to get paid a bit more. And that's a couple of reasons for that. That is one of the reasons is one of the reasons will be because there is a risk, because when you do work for them, your job can end quicker. And it's always, you go from one job to the other, so you have a little bit of time between each job potentially, and so you need to have at least a bit of pay to be able to put aside and to cover it. Also, too, the fact is that when you're working agency, you're not an employee technically of the you're not an employee of either the organization nor the agency. And so, and because of that kind of unique position, you do get paid a bit more because you are an expense. You're not, you're not a on the roles of the organization. So that means it's like for them buying a piece of equipment. They pay a flat fee. They buy, let's say, a car. They pay X amount of pounds for it. And so when they pay the agency for you, they pay the agency X amount each week that you work there, and also each week. And so that means for them that they get a lot of, it means it's less of expense. And so the agency then takes takes off your taxes, your pension and all this stuff, and then what's ever left for them is a profit, and then you get paid the remainder, roughly, part of it. That kind of remaining, it goes to you, and then anything else is profit for them. So it is a very, kind of win-win, because it keeps the business, it keeps their expenses down. And it allows a business to be a bit more fluid, because then if they don't need the 8 people, they can get rid of it. Or if things start to take off, they can hire quickly, a lot faster through the agency. So agencies do offer, excuse me, offer businesses flexibility. So it really does. Oh, geez, I'm losing my voice here. Just kind of. So, no, I agree totally with Nick here. People shouldn't be embarrassed with agencies. They are really good, especially if you can get one. Especially if you can get one that is very, very good. And there's a lot of good agencies out there, so I have a lot of good to say. And I will say that also, too, during this kind of journey from my contract ending to kind of finding the next one, one of the things is to, excuse me, is I wind up with, there's always a bit, and again, like I always say, apologies for it, but there's a lot of shit agencies out there, and I've had a few contacts with a few that will send me contacts, and which is stuff that I totally don't qualify for. And then when I try to ask them to clarify, they just kind of like, well, just send us your CV, and we'll see what they say. And I just always say to them, no, I'm not. It's again, because when they say send me your CV and they deflect the question, I always know it's a sign of it's a waste of my time, and I just say no to them. So what it is with these agencies, because I have a master's degree in law, and I don't practice, I will get from the more, for lack of a better word, shitty agencies, stuff for like senior solicitor, or senior solicitor, or other type of solicitor roles, and I just have to say, like, to them back, will they consider somebody who's not qualified? Because it's not worth my time to send it off. And a lot of times they'll just say, well, I'll just send your CV and we'll see what they have to say. And I always will just say to them, like, no, it's not worth my time if you can't give me a straight answer, because you should know. They should know, if they're a really good, legit agency, and they've been approached for the job by the organization to find someone on a temporary basis, then they should know the ins and outs, and who they want, or who they will hire and consider, and who they won't. And to sit there and kind of deflect, to me, is always a red flag. Like, well, if you can't tell me, then they haven't contracted you to find a job for them. So you've basically looked at this, you've done a search on the internet, you pulled it off, and you think that I'm a fit for it, even though my CV is very clear that I'm not qualified. And I've told you I'm not qualified. But yet you still are pursuing me, and you can't answer directly, will they consider somebody who's not qualified? And so that just tells me a load. And so I will just say, no, thank you, not. and then I'll just start to block them on my phone as they try to call me on my phone. I just sit there and block them because it's not worth my time to pursue something that I know I won't get, but it's just for them. It gives them, a tick a box for them, and it gets that recruiter, a bit of funding from the agency because they put forward a CV, so they may get, X amount, you know, they may get a little bit of an incentive, as part of a bonus, to submit that CV. And so I'm not going to, be a party to that and just tell them flat out no and just ignore their calls because it's just not worth it. Absolutely not worth it. So, yeah. So, it's coming down to the last minute. Just want to remind everyone, hey, Sky, just want to say to everyone, this has been a really great day. Thank you for following and joining. Thank you for the gifts, the likes, the shares, the follows. I will be back tomorrow at 4 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, taking your questions on CVs, cover letters, networking. And I will be also take it back at 4 a.m. tomorrow, Greenwich Mean Time, taking your questions. I will, on things like, CVs, cover letters, interview, networking, workplace situations, university applications, personal statements, UCAS, anything else career or employment related. I want to say, thank you all for joining. And if there's anything you want to see tomorrow, have me covered tomorrow, just drop me a message. And thank you. And I will see you back again tomorrow, 4 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time.